Good evening. Welcome to the Courageous Conversation. I am Ricardo Bryan. Mental health. When we started this series 6 episodes ago, we were clear on our objectives. How to move our young Black men. Our intention was always to help moving our young Black men from being endangered to empowered. Mental health, often used term, but we really sometimes don't understand the connotation. How do we deal with it? What is it? How do we pray it away, or do we medicate it away? How do we engage the issues of mental health in our homes, community, church, society? Is it taboo, or are we simply ignorant of the facts? Welcome to this episode. I promise you that today you are in for a treat today, because we'll be examining mental health in all its facets as best we can as you come around our kitchen table every other Sunday night to examine or to be a part of our courageous conversation. If men are to be the backbone of our society and to lead their lives and setting examples for their family and their future, it is therefore critical that we stop to examine the crisis of mental health among our men in our society, and particularly our men of color, our Black men. I'm inviting you to share this conversation today. I'm inviting you to spread it along, invite your friends to tune in, because today it is my hope that after this session, we will have been more educated and we will have been more involved. I'm looking forward to introducing my guest to you, but first, take a look at this video, then we speak on the other side. Welcome.
I think there's an idea that men, at least straight men, have to be strong and hard-hearted so as to be a protector and fighter. I don't know why showing emotion is supposed to indicate men are weaker, nor why emotional hardness is an important thing. All these aspects seem to be a part of a fairly sexist notion of masculinity that men are supposed to follow whether they want to or not.
This goes back to the days of the Bible. Honestly, we were born to be the foundation. We're the stronghold. So for us, we're not allowed to bend. We're not allowed to break. And unfortunately, that's carried on throughout generations, and the ability to show emotion.
I feel like up until recently, society had these unwritten rules about men and women, and women were allowed to have emotions and thus be allowed to share them, and men were not allowed to have emotions. They had to be independent, they had to be stoic, they weren't allowed to have problems, they could only have solutions. And so when we take this into modern times, I feel like it's easier for women to share their emotions because it was always expected that women were emotional, and it's harder for men to share their emotions because for a very long time the unwritten rule was men don't have normal human emotions, which is ridiculous.
You know, as an African American, as a minority in general, I think the stigma behind mental illness and why we're afraid to talk about it is very, very strong. And I know for me, I was diagnosed with clinical depression as a teenager, and it's taken years, well over a decade, for me to feel comfortable in my own skin and be able to talk about my own story.
If men are less likely than women to reach out for help for mental illness, I'm not surprised. It's that notion that men aren't supposed to appear weak. Now, I know that asking for help isn't a failing. There are some things that people just can't do for themselves because we all have limits. And yet women are expected to ask for help in all things, and men are told by society that they should be impossibly self-sufficient. And that binary aspect to gender expectations around masculine self-sufficiency is also baloney.
With this idea of being brave, courageous, and independent comes this idea that men should not need help. And if men need help, then they're not real men. So men don't really ask for help when it comes to mental health and mental illness, or at least it's difficult for most men because of this idea that it is a sign of weakness. And of course, this isn't true. Everybody needs help now and then, and that's okay.
Talking honestly to my family, my grandmother, my mom's mom, does not know that I suffer from clinical depression. It took me until I was 30 to be able to feel comfortable enough to talk to my mom. And that was after getting involved with mental health organizations and talking about it on my own radio show.
Well, there you have it. Men speaking about mental health. And tonight, I'm pleased to have at my kitchen table with me today some men and a lady who'll be talking to friends coming on board to share the conversation today. Again, share this everywhere you can for our conversation. So without further ado, let me bring in my first guest, the gentleman that I thought about immediately when I wanted to talk about mental health and its impact if not treated and taken care of. Straight out of Kingston, Jamaica, Dr. Donovan Thomas is the founder of and president of Choose Life International, a non-profit organization registered in Jamaica and, of course, the United States. And he's a former national director of the Jamaica Youth for Christ, a post he held for 14 years, and a past regional director for Youth for Christ International in the Caribbean. Dr. Thomas is a graduate of the Jamaica Theological Seminary. He holds a doctorate in ministry from Columbia Theological Seminary in Atlanta, Georgia, and has conducted extensive research on the subject confronting suicidal propensity among Jamaica teenagers. He first became involved in work with suicidal persons over 30 years ago, and he's the author of the book, Confronting Suicide, Helping Teens at Risk, a book which has received the endorsement of the Ministry of Education in Jamaica. He's a man whom I admire greatly in his work and for what he represents. Please welcome to our kitchen table, Dr. Donovan Thomas. Doc, how are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. Good to be with you, Ricardo. Keep up the good work.
Thanks much. How things over there in my lovely country?
Well, I can tell you it is not snowing, but people are afraid to go outside still.
Be careful, be careful.
Lots of stuff going on, but it is a place to be. Nowhere better than yard.
There you go, sir.
There's nowhere better than home.
There you go. There you go. Thank you. Thanks, Doc, for coming by. And then next up at the kitchen table today is a young man whom I met online and who we invited here because he has a story to tell. His name is Gerard Placide. Coming from a musical background, Gerard Placide began his quest as a soloist at the tender age of 3. A native of Trinidad and Tobago, he formerly resided in Atlanta, Georgia, where he served as a minister of music at his former church, the Cathedral of Chapel Hill. Gerard has had the privilege to sing for such luminaries as the Queen of England in London, through chances for children under the patronage of the Duchess of York, Sarah Ferguson, the President of the UN 57th General Assembly, His Excellency Julian Robert Hunt, New York Senator Hillary Rodham Clinton, and of course, presidents such as Bill Clinton, George Bush, and President Barack Obama. He also served as a soldier in the United States Army 3rd Infantry Division at Fort Stewart, Georgia. Help me welcome to our kitchen table my brother, Gerard Placide. Gerard, welcome and thanks for coming by.
Bless. Thank you for being here. It's
Yes.
my honor and privilege.
Thanks much, Doc, and we look forward to the discussion. Next up is a brother who has been a returning guest to our kitchen table, so you know he's part of the family. He's Dr. Maurice Cassell. He's a behavioral health specialist and therapist, and Maurice Cassell has served in various ministries, including youth ministry, Christian education, and evangelism. As an educator, Maurice has served in elementary, middle, high schools, teacher, dean, and school therapist. As a clinician, Dr. Maurice specializes in child, adolescent therapy, marriage, family therapy, crisis counseling, integrated therapy. When I sought for somebody to come and help us interrogate this whole issue of mental health, Dr. Maurice is the one we went for. He currently provides collaborative care with the National Alliance on Mental Illness in Georgia, where he trains and certifies first responders, such as police, school officers, and EMTS and clinicians, educators. A friend of mine, a brother, a very newly minted father, and he has the scars to show it.
That's right.
Father, welcome.
Oh, Ambassador Ricardo, it's good to be with you again, my friend, and all of our distinguished guests. I'm just looking forward to this conversation and eating at your table. By the way, I'm trying to look in to see what exactly you had for dinner, but
Oh, yeah.
I'll back away. Good
We
to
have
see
bread
you.
of heaven, bread of heaven.
There you go, bread of life.
Next up, I cannot do any conversation thoroughly if I don't have a woman at the table. And of course, we had to find the one to add her voice to this discussion. And her name is Vera Imperiali Wilson, formerly from Brooklyn, and she's proud to let you know she's from Brooklyn and New Jersey. She now resides far away in Albany, New York. And of course, she has been in nursing for over 25 years. Dr. Imperiali, who begs me not to call her by the doctor, she has a PhD. But for her biggest role and her love is her role of psychiatric nurse practitioner in her own company called VIS Healthcare Promotions. And of course, as an adjunct faculty at Sage College, she is in the business of diagnosing, medicating, managing, and offering therapy, and that's her expertise. Welcome, Vera. Glad to have you at our table today.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here with a bunch
All right.
of wonderful people.
Thanks much. All right, guys, listen, let's jump on it. Mental health among our men. Mental health and our men. That's our topic today. And there are many things that boggles my mind as I prepared for this conversation. It is indeed a conversation worth having, and a conversation must be had at this time. We will examine, for you viewers, what's going on in our society. We'll examine real life situation with mental health. We'll ask this question about, is the church equipped? How is the church dealing with the mental health issues there? We'll examine racism. I know it has impacted the black man and mental health. We will come at it from all directions. But I want to start off by inviting to talk a little to Gerard Placide. Gerard commented on my post, the 25 push-up challenge, and he said, Ricardo, thanks for doing this. I attempted suicide a few times, and I've received healing over the years, and here's what I've done. And I said, will you share your story? He said, yes. Gerard, now's your time, sir. Talk to us about when you knew you were struggling with an issue. Maybe you didn't know what it was called, but you knew you had something that you were dealing with. Talk to us about that. As an ex-military officer, as somebody who was touring the world using your talent. Talk to us about that struggle that you were facing.
I think it initially started as a child.
Yes.
Not knowing really what love was. Not proud about it. I struggled trying to find who is Gerard.
Okay.
For me, it only came full circle just a couple of years ago. I grew up in church. Ended up on the streets. The Bible says that a man's gift shall make room for him. And it was through being discovered on the streets that I got the opportunity to go to England. Sang for the Duchess of York. The invitation was afforded through Sir Trevor McDonald and BBC. He made it happen because he heard of, my story from England. Got a letter through the British High Commission, was sent to the Trinidad and Tobago government to let them know that whatever it is he needs, try to, make it happen. Got an opportunity, got a visa to come to the United States, came to the United States, started singing on on the train. And during all this time, I was still fighting with my demons.
Mhm.
I was a compulsive liar, primarily because I didn't like me,
Okay.
and so I didn't know what love was. I really didn't. Was the first of 4, and so in my mind, I thought that it was perhaps found in the arms of a woman, only to crash 2 marriages, and then I realized, no, that's not it.
Mhm.
And I just wanted out. I just wanted out. I was the guy who was applauded by the church.
Yes.
They loved my voice. They loved the fact that, wow, you got to sing for Obama and Clinton and the Queen, and everybody applauded
Mhm.
the accolades. But deep down inside, I was bleeding.
Mhm.
I was bleeding. Then I realized and stuff that through the church, it was the gift that they appreciated.
Yeah.
It wasn't the carrier of the gift. And
let me repeat that. So you found that it was the gift that was appreciated, wasn't the carrier of the gift and all that the carrier is dealing with. Yeah.
because, Ricardo, the applause was loud.
Okay.
The acclamations was many. Sitting here, and I will show you some of the stuff. They probably have more proclamations and citations from Congress, pushing for cross-cultural integration, pushing for immigration reform.
Yeah.
Love the voice. But many realized and stuff that in church, not so much that I had a problem, they looked at me as the problem.
Okay.
And so I was tired. I was tired. And when I left my country, Trinidad and Tobago, I left 20-something years ago. I left broken. So I went into marriages and stuff, and I failed miserably. Again, not knowing what was love.
Okay.
All I knew that I wanted to be loved. I looked at the quote-unquote perfect marriage, and I tried to emulate it. But the thing about it is that the demons, I was still fighting with it.
So let me ask you this. You said something earlier about love, and I'm going to bring in right now Dr. Morris. But you said earlier, looking for love, right? In our pre-interview conversation, you spoke about not feeling love from a parent in your life. Was that what you always thought, that you lacked something that you wanted to find?
Father figure.
Yeah.
Father figure. But then, as I grew older, I realized that my grandfather had an issue.
Yeah.
And took it out on my dad.
Okay.
And I spoke to my dad, who told me that he's great grandfather. So I realized that it was a generational cycle.
Good. I'm gonna come back there with you because there's more to talk about. Let me bring in Dr. Morris. Doc, we've heard a lot here. We've heard one, a man who is practicing, a man who is performing, a man who is in front in the limelight. We've heard a man who is in church. We've heard somebody who had a father figure issue, who incidentally, whose father didn't have it from his father. Hurt people. Talk to us as we frame this mental health and our men, using what Gerard say as a launching pad for the discussion.
First of all, Ricardo, thank you for what you're doing to end the silence, the shame, and the stigma of mental health.
Yes.
Not only in our culture, but particularly in our church, right? Because there's so much stigma that surrounds mental health or mental illness in our church, and immediately when we start talking about mental health, there are many who would say, let's just pray, or let's just cast out the demons, or it's a weakness, it's a flaw. And I am so grateful that we have Gerald online with us to help break that stigma that you can be in church, you can be a Christian, and still be managing, and notice the words that I use, managing a mental health condition, right? That's what it is. Gerald and so many others are managing that. And Gerald, in that brief moment that you spoke, you shared several things. And I want to highlight the fact that the first question that comes to people's mind would be, where does mental illness or mental health condition come from, right? And Gerald, you spoke to so many pieces of that, but I want to say here that mental health or a mental health condition is complex and it's complicated. There's no one reason for a mental health condition. And I want to say that again, there's no one reason. It could be generational, right? It could be a genetic condition. It could be medically induced. Dr. Vera will talk more about that in a moment. It could be chemically induced. It could be as a result of trauma. It could be as a result of a triggering event, or it could simply be just the fact that someone might be more vulnerable to that mental health condition. And when an experience happens, it triggers that condition. So just to put it in context for you. Yep, absolutely.
And I think it's a context that's necessary where there's no one thing. In fact,
there's
several questions I have as I prepared for this today, because again, it's not a sexy topic. It's not a topic where folks want to run into.
Not at all.
But I thought it was critical enough because it is something that I find, and I'm sticking to the lane of men, that has been dogging men so that it's a crisis. We have Dr. Thomas, who's going to come on soon to talk about where it ultimately leads to. But we're conscious that it doesn't always lead to suicide only. It leads to broken homes. Gerard spoke about end of 2 marriages. It leads to people going on the streets. It leads to constant underperformance at education level in our young men. Because again, it starts from quite a long way. I want to bring in right now Dr. Vera. Vera, again, forgive me because you warned me about doctorizing you. Vera, talk to us about what you have noticed in your practice. Folks coming in and seeing you. Again, the question I have ask you, is it environmental or is it internal? Is it nature? Is it nurture? What are you seeing as the medical expert now on this panel? Talk to us about your observations.
First of all, there's still a very vast stigma about mental health.
Yes.
We call hypertension the silent killer. But all of us would go get our blood pressure checked. And even though you all men here look wonderfully handsome and you have a great body, if you had hypertension, you know it's genetic.
Yes.
It's medicine. Well, I call depression the silent killer. People live with it and they put on this fake attitude. And then you never know what's going on. By the time they come in to see me, they're in that crisis. I actually say, if there was a gun on the table and loaded, would you pick it up and kill yourself? And they look at me, why are you talking about that? That's the reality of it. And so therefore, when I look at someone, I think of it, there's a lot of parts. Yes, it could be a spiritual demonic attack, but maybe 2% of of that is what it is. Yes, it could be biochemical and genetic, which means my father had depression, my grandfather committed suicide, my great-grandmother was neurotic. And then there's, when you think about biology, you think of the chemicals, the neurotransmitters, the circuits, the pathways, but we don't treat it until you get out of it. If you came to the ER, I was an ER nurse for 20 years, and you had chest pain, I would treat that chest pain so you wouldn't get a heart attack.
Right.
Come to the ER because you're depressed and you're cutting yourself a little bit. They won't even give you a medication. They send you home and tell you, go find yourself a practitioner to give you medicine. So that's the first thing. It could be environmental too. If you're brought up into a household where there's trauma, there's domestic violence, where you're witnessing violence, where you're seeing your mother getting beaten, where there's poverty, where there's socioeconomic problems, where there's an educational deficit, you're going to be more likely to be depressed because PTSD left untreated will lead to depression. And then there's other medical, if you have diabetes or cardiovascular or thyroid, you can be depressed. So it's very complex. Now, resiliency is a big thing. How do we get young Black men at the age of 14 when 60% of people are depressed by the age of 14? How do we...
Take your time, Doc, with that statistics. And repeat that for me.
Excuse me?
Can you repeat that statistic you just gave?
How do we...
60%?
60% of teenagers, Black teenagers at the age of 14 are depressed already.
Wow.
It's a preventative thing if we start younger. But going back to the first video you showed, how often do we say to our kids, it's okay to cry? They're crying and you'll say, oh, get over it. What are you crying for? I'll give you something to cry about. But so we don't even let them feel their emotion.
Yes.
So really, when someone comes in, you have to kind of dissect. Is it biochemical? Is there environmental stressors? Is there a spiritual component? But going back to what you say, I sit in a hub up here. So I have a lot of Black pastors who are my friends. And they bring in their congregation because they've been to some Black churches and they feel like they're going there, their soul is broken, they're wounded, their heart is broken. And they're getting told, maybe you're not fasting enough, you're not praying enough, you're not tithing enough. So that guilt and condemnation even go deeper into their soul. And then they shut off completely.
Yes.
So who do they come to? A white woman who will bear their soul to them? Because I say, listen, we're all dysfunctional. Let's get over it now and move on. You have issues, I have issues. Let's share it because we're one family for the glory of God. But that doesn't happen in our society.
We're going to come to that. We are going to come to the church. Believe me, Dr. Maurice is on here for a reason. We're coming to the church and we're going to deal with that. But I really wanted to get to the medical aspect and Agumi. Let me swing around to Dr. Thomas. Dr. Thomas's dissertation and body of work over the past 30 years has a lot to do with deal with suicide. And if you notice, based on his book, Confronting Suicide in Teens, At-Risk Teens, let me get the title correct. It basically says, Confronting Suicide, Helping Teens at Risk. Doc, talk to us. What is your research, your work showing? And those of you watching who have teens, who have young men, who there, you need to lock into something here. What is your research showing you, Doc, as it pertains to the suicide as you have been working through, you've been dealing with in your ministry, Choose Life International? Tell us about that.
Hi, Ricardo. Good evening again, everybody. It's such a privilege to be with you. I really came to this as a minister of religion. Came involved in the church. I was serving as National Director of Youth for Christ, and I was very concerned about the youth I was working with. And I decided to do a research on Jamaican teenagers at risk, the church's response. And I was very surprised when 1 in 4 of the teenagers we interviewed indicated that they seriously thought about taking their own lives. I said, as a youth worker and as a Christian youth worker, we should find answers. I then went on to do a research on pastoral response to teen suicide. And then finally did my doctoral dissertation on confronting suicidal propensity among Jamaican teenagers, which is the base for the book Confronting Suicide, Helping Teens at Risk. And one of the things I found is that there are just so many people who are at risk. 1 in 4, my research showed, but many times it is covered over, it is hidden. People don't want to talk about it. Even parents are in denial.
Yes.
And if they're in the context of church, it is masked and all those kinds of stuff. So what we have tried to do is to understand the times and to know what we ought to do. And there's a sense in which we must face the realities. People are wanting to kill themselves and are indeed killing themselves. Approximately 800,000 people die by suicide every year.
Yeah.
Every 40 seconds, somebody dies by suicide. And in the United States of America, what we have seen is a 2% increase in suicide from 2006. So we used to talk about 30,000 people in the United States dying from suicide every year. Now it's close to 50,000 people per year. And that is cause for concern. We have got to rise up and stand to be able to empower people to know what are the signs of those at risk and be willing to take measures to prevent. No longer can we say, that's not my child, that's not my concern. It is all of us concerned. And World Suicide Prevention Day is coming up on the 10th of September. And the theme is working together to prevent suicide. And that's what we are interested in. All of us have a part to play.
And that's what we are about here tonight. There are a lot of things that Doc just said. And those of you tuning in, listen, of all the conversations I've prepared for, this one has had the biggest burden on my life, because I believe the stigma that has surrounded this is one that we are to try to dispel, dismantle, deconstruct, discard tonight. Let me read something to you and think about this. As you think about mental illness, because everybody has mental health, guys. Let me just break it down. The same way you have a physical health. It is what aspect of the pendulum you are regarding your physical health. You can either be healthy or not healthy. Once you have a brain, you have mental health. But as Dr. Murray said earlier, it is mental illness that we're conscious of, and so we can treat it. We just spoke about we touched some of the medical implications of it. Dr. Thomas spoke about where it came from as a minister of the gospel. Gerard started off telling you what he dealt with that led him to the point of wanting to say, I want out of this. I'm asking you to go ahead, share this link, get everybody to come on in, come closer. Very important, because we've just started and warming up. Listen to the statistic I found as I did my own research. Men are facing a crisis. 12 men, and I pulled this one from, I think, 2018, die of suicide every day. 12 in this country. 76% of all suicides, according to one research I saw, are male. Yes. This killer is claiming the lives of male under 45 than anything else. Listen to that and pull in closer. Think of your brother. Think of your father. Think of your son. Think of your nephew. Think of your uncle. Think of your husband. And the main thing around this, as I'll bring back in Dr. Maurice a bit, is silence. Not speaking about it because of these things. Dr. Maurice, let me bring you back into the conversation. And Gerard, stand by. Listen to these words. Don't cry. Be a man. Man up. All right? Man up. Come on. Don't be a sissy. You're behaving like a 10-year-old girl. The notion that men do not show emotions. We need to be stoic, emotionless. We need to have it together. We need to be tough. Dr. Maurice, tell me about the implication of that and how it pushes men to the periphery of the cliff of mental illness that perpetuates itself in all the various ills.
Wow. So amazing what you're sharing, the statistics, the research, the medicine, the personal story. But before I respond to you, Ricardo, this thought came to my mind, and I think it's important that we do this. Whenever we speak of such heavy topics like mental illness and suicide awareness and prevention, I always feel it's important to give the disclaimer that these are heavy topics. And if at any time you're feeling overwhelmed by this, please make sure that you check in with someone, or you engage with your own coping skills, breathing, whether it's prayer, it's meditation, have someone, at your. It's really important that we do that, because
Yes.
when we talk about especially suicide, our own struggles for some will come to mind, or we'll remember our own family members, friends who've taken their lives by suicide. So we don't want to overlook that, and reminding folks that if it becomes overwhelming, please make sure that you take some time to check in with yourself and just be honest with what's going on. But absolutely, Dr. Vera talked about the silent killer. And the way I like to talk about mental illness is no different than a medical illness. Just like a medical illness needs to be treated, and Dr. Vera, you were speaking of that, just like a medical illness needs to be treated, so does a mental health condition. Right? If you have an ulcer, it's a disease of the stomach. Well, if you have a mental health condition, it's a disorder or a disease of the brain, and both need to be treated. So we want people to see it in that context, right? That mental health is no different than medical health. The other thing I want to say, and then I'll answer the question, is it's important, as we're speaking to a large faith-based community, Christian-based community, that we want to make this clear that psychology, counseling, medicine does not oppose God. And it's really important that we say that.
Repeat that, please.
Psychology,
Yes.
counseling, mental health, medicine does not oppose God.
Yes.
They actually reveal God, and they are because of God.
Yes.
Right? So psychology and counseling helps us to understand the complexities of man, right? And the complexities of the things that come towards man. So we really want to be clear in that some people are saying, okay, let's just pray, let's go fast, let's cast out the demons, and that's what we need to do. But please know that the sciences, they do not oppose God. They reveal God, and they help us to understand the complexities of what's happening with man. What's happening with man? When we say man, we're talking about males in this context. When we are silent, right? And if we don't deal with those traumatic events, those mental health conditions, right? It can lead to internalizing problems such as suicidal thoughts, depression, anxiety. And then it can also lead to externalizing problems. And what we mean by that is, which is where you're seeing an increase in anger, aggression, domestic abuse, right? Because what's happening is that those things become trapped in our bodies and in our minds, right? And those imprints that's on our brains, right? They become trapped. And if we don't have a way to get it out there, right, it's going to manifest in other ways. And we're wondering, what happened? Where did that come from? So I really want to encourage particularly our males, right? And the way I like to do it, I work a lot with adolescents and teens, but also with adults, is I'll have a balloon. And what I'll do is I'll have them blow up the balloon, and I'll say, go ahead and inflate the balloon. And I'll ask the silly question, how did you inflate the balloon? And they would say, and these are kids and adults, they would say, well, I released air, or I blew air into it. And I said, that's exactly my point, right? We all have emotions. If you're alive, if you have brain, if you're breathing, right? You have emotions. So when people say, especially males say, I have no emotions, if you're alive, you have some kind of emotion. And just like that balloon, you need to have a place to put it, or else it's going to manifest in things like disorder, pathology, and it's going to come up on you. So I hope I answered the question.
You did. Gerard, let me talk to you. Again, pulling in, brother. Again, you're here sharing your life for the world, and thank you for being there for us on this one. Gerard, what were some of the things that you were grappling with? And again, I'm glad we can speak now, as you have said, and we're going to ask you in the next segment of this discussion, what are you doing now? But what are some of the things? Was it anxiety? Was it depression? What were some of the things where you know that this is too much for me? And were you able to tell anybody? Tell me about the silence that we're talking about, bro.
No, it goes back to what the guest just before said. For me, it was I couldn't say, I couldn't say anything. For starters, I knew something was wrong.
Yes.
And I only found out when everything started to go downhill.
Okay.
Now I came from my dad is old school, but my mom used to be on my dad.
Yes.
Don't label him that way, don't speak to him that way, but it's what he knew.
Yes.
But there was a point in time where I believed that I was no good. I believed that I was trash.
Yes.
And so I said on occasions, well, if that is the case, they don't like me at home, they don't like me in church, I don't even like me. And as a matter of fact, I didn't even know who I was.
Yes.
You understand? I just looked at myself as, this singer that excited people, long resume. I didn't see any value. I didn't see any worth.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody was there to really say, I feel you, I see you. I would sing, and they would talk about the passion and stuff in the songs, because I'm a high baritone second tenor.
Yeah.
And people would talk about, oh my God, you were so emotional. And 99% of the time, it's me actually crying in the song. Yes, it's ministering to me. But here it is, I am exerting the song. Like, for instance, How Great Thou Art.
Yeah.
And I'm singing the song, and I still believe that he's great. But there was a part of me that wasn't seeing that greatness.
Yes.
And so I decided, having heard he's this, he's that, he's the other, or I would, as soon as I come around, it would be like the Red Sea. People would just part.
Yeah.
That's when I looked at suicide. And in my life, I attempted this thing about 8 different times.
8 times.
8
You attempted.
times. And I looked at myself as weak. I was labeled as weak.
Yes.
And that's what pushed me to go join the United States military. When I went in there, it exacerbated, as a matter of fact, I think, the issue.
Yeah. Okay. Slow down a little there, Doc. Slow down a little there and take some more on this. So you were labeled as weak. You are not connecting to the experience you're having, which is, so I want to experience the performance you are giving.
Yes, sir.
You decided, let me go to enlist in the military.
And I did.
And that you thought exacerbated the issue.
When I went in there, it was learned that I was connected, heavily connected. And one of the individuals who I was connected with was a man who I called Big Brother.
Yes.
When I was in Delaware. And I was always sharing with him that I want to go in, and he would ask me if I'm sure, and I would say yes. And he would guide me. He's dead now.
Yeah.
His name is Bo Biden.
Yeah.
Bo became captain. That's Vice President Biden's son.
Yeah.
And a lot of Bo was one of the individuals who opened up a lot of the opportunities and stuff for me to sing.
Yes.
And there were times and stuff I shared. He would call the bass, or there would be other people. You'd have like Robert Gates and this one. But chain of command had an issue because, one, I was black.
Yeah.
Two, I had an accent.
Yes.
And three, as a specialist, how is it
You're so
that
connected.
this little black boy could have these individuals higher, the upper echelons calling here? And so I became a target indirectly.
Yeah.
So, like, for instance, I was to when the invitation came from Robert Gates to go to Washington to sing for the military ball. It was coming. The invitation was sent to me, but they were sending it to Chain of Command. Chain of Command called me in. How did this happen?
Mm.
And they went after me. And I was saying, I was just asked, you have to follow the chain of command. This, that, the other. And they looked for every single thing under the sun.
Mm.
And then when other junior soldiers realized that I was connected and some of the top brass was attacking me, I decided to lock my mind into military law, which is the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So every time they came to me, I would have article, chapter, section. And a lot of the other soldiers and stuff who would get themselves in problem would end up coming to me.
Yeah.
And that's when things started to get out of hand.
Yeah.
And by then, I couldn't handle it.
So eventually you came out of you were released, you said, from the army. You give us the right.
I was released.
Right.
Medical discharge.
Right.
Because, and I'm not going to go into tours or anything like that. All I'm going to say is this: I was what they label as damaged goods, and they contributed. You understand?
Good.
We have a lot of my comrades who also committed suicide. Men who I saw, the safety was off their weapon.
So much to unpack here, Gerard, and I bring it over to others. So much to unpack that Gerard has opened up with us. And again, before he came on, we had the conversation, and he agreed to share and be as courageous and open. So again, thank you, Gerard. Bringing in the doctors on this one. Gerard spoke of something that has bothered me where it comes to men and our bringing. Both of you are fathers. In fact, all three of you men are fathers. And of course, Vera, mother, grandmother, she proudly tells me of people of every race, class, and creed. But there's something about men growing up that we're told we're supposed to be warriors and providers. Societal expectation says warriors and providers. What I've not yet done is to share with you my story, but we're going to move on from that. Warriors and providers. Dr. Thomas, tell me how this warrior and provider expectation of the man has created and has caused that pressure point for some men that as very early, they're like, I cannot handle this. And I don't know how to deal with it. You're on mute. You're on
Okay.
mute now.
So certainly socialization. Are you hearing me now?
Perfect. Yes.
Yes.
Are you hearing me now? Yes. So I'm saying certainly socialization is one of those factors that result in such an increase disproportionately of suicide when compared men and women. We grew up hearing that we can't. Think with me for a moment, please. 2 3-year-olds are playing, a boy and a girl. The girl falls. How do we respond to the girl?
Yes.
The
Get
boy
up,
falls.
go,
How do we respond to the boy? Pick her up, give her a kiss. Mwah. Hush, darling, don't cry. But we said to our boy, you need a
Yes,
man,
get up, go,
be
brush
tough
it
and
off.
probably give him a slap and label him. And men grew up with that kind of stuff, feeling I must be tough. And therefore, we need to be very deliberate about helping our boys and our girls to be able to express their feelings. So it is okay for men to cry. It is okay for boys to express their emotions. And boys have emotions, girls have emotions, and parents and church leaders, Sunday school teachers and others need to be very deliberate about processing with young people where they are to be able to deal with that. Let me just share some other stuff here. So there are 4 reasons that I give why there is such a high, there is such a vast
Yes.
number of suicide among men compared to women. One of them is socialization, but the other
Tell
one
us.
is also the psychological factor. We internalize stuff. We don't talk about it. We want to bottle it up. We hide under the image as a singer or as a soldier or as a servant or whatever it is. And so we live in denial. We live a life of pretense and hypocrisy. And when the pressure comes, then we are not able to deal with it. So there is socialization. There is a psychological factor where girls will actually talk about the stuff, but men internalize. We go down the road and we'll drink. We will talk we will take some drugs and that kind of stuff to be numb for a
Yes.
while. And then when we get back to soberness, we realize there's still an emptiness. Then there's also the matter of economic factor. Many men still feel that we have an obligation to meet the financial needs in the family and so forth.
But now, before I move, but it's not, for me, it's not we feel like it's obligation. Society says
yeah.
we have to do it because guess what? You're a worthless man. You're
Right.
worthless.
So one man called me one day and said, Dr. Thomas, I feel like I want to kill myself. And I said to him, help me understand what's going on. And he said, my baby mothers are pressuring me.
Baby mothers.
Plural. Yeah, baby mothers. But also the other factor, so I'm sharing socialization factor. I'm sharing psychological factor. I'm sharing economic factor. And so strong is the relationship between economy and suicide that a new word has been coined, econocide.
Wow.
And the 4th factor I want to share with us is religious factor.
Take your time on that one. Bring us in.
Yeah, religious factor. What's the largest religion in Jamaica? I know you haven't been here for a while, but you still know that it's Christianity.
The most Christian, yeah, man.
When you go to the place of worship, you know the place of worship of the Christians called church. When you go to the church, do you find more men or more women?
Oh, these are women. These are women.
Many more women. And many more women know that this too will pass. That God is not going to give them more than what He's prepared to help them bear. That even though the fig tree does not bud and there are no grapes in the vine, no cat in the stall, yet they can rejoice because there's a God who is with them. Many men are so disconnected spiritually and in terms of a religious connection that there is a gap. When I just started the research on suicide prevention, I remember being a part of a radio forum along with a psychiatrist as a guest. And the host asked me as a minister of religion, is it true that where there's strong religious conviction, there's less suicide? I kind of beat around the bush and hesitated, very inexperienced at that time. And I remember the psychiatrist saying, Dr. Thomas, you don't need to hesitate on that because religion really helps to build resilience in our lives. So when we know that it doesn't stop with us, that there's a God who is able to come into our situation and give us the help and the strength that we need, we have more potential to be able to move on.
Dr. Donovan, I'm going to take a little issue with the last one because there's also a school of thought, and again, this is coming from a Christian man, right? A school of thought that says that religion has also had added some mental pressure and stress
Wow.
to many people and men because they're craving for something, or in fact, Dr. Vera said earlier that part of the stress component that people are dealing with coming into practice, and I open up for you right now, Dr. Vera, is they're telling them that you're not faithing this thing enough, you're not fasting enough. Come on, and we keep coming up with this. What else I need to do because I've bound and loose, I've prayed and fast, and I'm still having this problem. Vera,
All right.
coming in on this one. Sorry. Go ahead, Doc. Go ahead.
Oh, well, there are a few things. There is relationship as against religiosity.
Okay.
Where there's a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, there's greater aptitude to be able to survive these things. But also, we need to be very, very, very clear that mental illness affects Christians and non-Christians. And there are some things that we need to be able to diagnose properly and be able to treat properly. If there is a need to deal with deliverance, then we deal with it. But not all mental illness things are related to demonic activity, and therefore we should be slow to label and be quick to do the research and do the diagnosis and be able to determine, is this medication or what is needed in that instance.
Vera, this is your time, and I'm coming back up to you. Vera, you hear how I came in with this thing, because I believe there's a school of thought that if people are up and looking and said, hey, this thing has messed me up more than anything else. But talk to me, Vera.
I have a phrase that says, prayer and Prozac, synergistic, not antagonistic.
Prayer and
Prozac, synergistic, not antagonistic.
Yes.
Sometimes we can't pray away. Now, how are you going to tell someone who can't get out of bed, pray more? So if you had a cardiac arrest, you would stabilize the rhythm of the heart and then get them on the treadmill. Same thing with mental health. You're in that major depressive disorder, give them whatever they need, the Prozac, the Abilify. Then look at the mind, emotion, and soul in the body so that the spirit can flow over into it. Right now, even in the Bible, it says, let the weak say that I am strong. God knew we were going to be weak. But he said, if you say it enough and you put it out in the atmosphere, you're going to change the neurotransmitters in your brain and get more dopamine, which is the pleasure principle of the brain. Science is catching up with the Bible, but we have to stabilize it medically first and then look at the mind, emotion, and will. And then our spirit can take over. So sometimes I believe that pastors do not take into consideration, this is a life emergency. It's the quality of life that we're living, and we don't want to lose anybody else.
Prayer and Prozac are synergistic, not antagonistic. Very important, because that is why this panel couldn't be complete without having a medical information and knowledge on this one. I'm going to come to you, Morris.
Ricardo, we are on the same page.
Exactly.
We are on the same page because many times we need to be able to get the medication to be able to stabilize them, to be able to even receive the prayer and receive the counseling.
Agreed.
Even before I give a medication, I'll pray over the medication that it's going to work. Right.
All right.
And then with Maurice sitting here, medicine alone is only 40%. If you do medicine and therapy together, it's 65% improvement.
That's right.
Gerard, talk to me. I'm going to go back to Gerard.
That's why.
Yes.
That's why I ran from church.
Okay.
And I'm going to be honest and stuff, because there was a number of us who came back from Iraq, and Pastor, Minister, I'm going to tell you, unless you were out there, you wouldn't go. We sold it. Many of us, believers, we went out to fight. You understand? When we came back, that's all we were hearing. Your relationship and stuff is not tight with God. I was like, wait a minute. Where were you? When we were in foxholes, you were lying down on a silly Posturepedic, driving in a Benz or whatever. We were dealing with 125 degrees Fahrenheit. couldn't tell whether women were strapped with IEDs or strapped with babies, taking orders to sweep, throw grenades. After the grenades goes into those rooms, we have to go into the rooms to make sure and stuff that those people are dead. And I come back, they want to tell me about I am not praying and I am disconnected. Where were you? And that got me pissed. And this is one of the reasons, and that's why I walked away, and particularly from my Caribbean culture when it came to church. I have a saying, and I sat down with Dr. Biden. That's Bo's mother. She was one of my counselors. And I said, you know, there's a huge difference between the African American culture and the Caribbean culture. And I came to understand it, you know. She said, really? Enlighten me. I said, in the Caribbean, it was sand, sea, sun. In America, it was bomb, blood, and bullets. Different cultures. So they couldn't tell me that I wasn't praying and stuff enough. Where were you? I loved him. I served him. But I was hurting. I left Trinidad in pain. Didn't even want to go back. And then when I came here, you know it, and then went into the army. It was, you know, it made it and stuff even worse. So no longer I didn't want to hear about music. I didn't want to hear about singing. You understand? But
Yes.
I found I started to do they had this thing at VA, yoga and that
Yes.
type of thing. That didn't, you know, I was calm and stuff for a while.
Yeah.
And then I started to, you know, look at different things and stuff. And then I started to exercise a lot. And then I realized that the older I got, the more, well, Ricardo, you see me and stuff every day.
Yes. Yes.
I'm 47 and I'm
Yes.
running 2 miles in 13 minutes.
No, we
And
soon
I
talk.
do it 6 days a week.
We soon talk about that because we're gonna go to how you have got over, because you know ultimately this conversation is always about how to get through and find some solution after we've discussed the pain.
But I
We're gonna
still
go
pray.
there. We're gonna
I still believe in the power of prayer. I still pray. I just
Absolutely.
didn't like the fact and stuff
Absolutely.
that I was labeled as disconnected from God
Yes.
when these people didn't walk in my shoes.
And that's the point. And that's the point. I'm going to bring in Dr. Maurice now. That's the point, Dr. Maurice. We're one of the things that has caused the disconnection with the message, the church, and you know all the conversations we've had. It is just that. It is how prepared we are, because I don't blame the church. I just
right.
carte blanche. I try to find out how prepared we are to deal with these things. How is the leadership prepared? How is the leadership trained? That you know that this is not something I can pray over and fast,
That's right.
but it's something that I need to find the best support for you to make this happen. Talk to us about that, Doc, because we're going to go now to the solution. We're going to go to how we can help folks get to where Gerard is. I'm going to find from Gerard, how did he make the transition from putting down the pills to trying to say, I can be wholesome? But talk about that, because there's more I want to discuss with the church, because I'm very conscious that many of the viewers are good folks from the church. Talk to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And our panelists said it, right? That religion, Christianity, spirituality, religiosity can serve as both a protective factor and a risk factor.
Yes.
And some people say, well, if you have God, you'll be all right. That is true. We know that we're believers online here, but also Christianity can tell us just pray and it will be okay.
Yeah.
Or Christianity will tell you for some that if you just pray it away, you don't need medication, right? So it can serve both as a risk factor and a protective factor. But here has been my experience with mental health, and many people who know my history. My history, of course, stems in church. You know, as a youth director, a youth preacher, a youth minister, and what I was seeing, Ricardo, was as I dealt with young people and their families. When these prevailing issues were coming up, these maladaptive issues, these crisis issues were coming up, immediately people would say, just pray with the young people, or just preach to them, or just have them, worship God. And all of those things are good. But what I found was that I was not equipped to handle those prevailing needs. So I felt the need to go back to school and equip myself so that when they got to those crisis moments, I'd be able to speak to them not only from a spiritual perspective and give them scriptures, but from a natural perspective, from a mental health perspective. There's several examples that come to my mind. You know, when parents have called and I've had to go to the psychiatric facilities or the mental health centers, and when I would go in there, not just as a minister, but I'd be able to come alongside the youth and their families, and even talking to the doctors about their treatment plan and advocating for them. And that's a word I want to throw out today, right? That we want to advocate for those with mental health. We want to equip our churches. We want to equip our people so that we're advocates, because being in this field, and Dr. Vera, you'll agree with me, being in this field, sometimes the field is not good to people, meaning we overly medicate and we misdiagnose. And so many of our people, particularly in the African American community, have been overly medicated and misdiagnosed. So when you have people who've been trained, who are Christians, who go in, and I've had to do this. I've had to sit with the doctors and, with the parents' permission, say to them, what does the treatment plan look like? Yes. What is the diagnosis? And immediately they may say something like, oh, we're going to give them Risperdal, right? And Vera, you're loving this. We're going to give them Risperdal. And perhaps I would say to them, well, why Risperdal? And, what's the dosage and how long are you thinking about? Perhaps what about Wellbutrin, or maybe Lexapro or Abilify? And what I'm saying is what you said, Ricardo, rather than castigating or attacking the church, it's realizing that the church may not be equipped to handle those things, and that's okay. Yes. And that's why we collaborate with people who've been trained. Exactly. People who've been trained in the field, and we help them to come alongside them, right? And that's what we're seeing now, where I want us to leave with a sense of hope that the tide is turning, right? Where the church is becoming more and more open to people like myself, where I could say, listen, I'm Pentecostal, I speak in tongues, I'm the preacher, I can do the backflips, I could do all of that, but I'm a son of the church who has also been afforded the opportunity to be in the mental health field. I can now bridge the gap in saying we are not opposing God. We are not against God when we say you may need to take a little bit of medication if needs be, right? So I think that's where it starts. If we can begin to continue these conversations and tearing down those barriers and those walls that says, it's demonic and we just need to pray. So,
and here's one of the things, Doc, that I bring you guys in as I prepared. I'm going to go to Dr. Donovan next, but here's something that I find, and those watching from the church should take some cue. As I press into the issue where men, boys are not to show emotions, Dr. Donovan spoke about that earlier, it's actually antithetical. It is opposite from really what Bible teaches. And I bring you in something here. If you think about this man whom we follow, Jesus Christ, right? Think about all the emotions he showed in Scripture. He got angry. He wept.
That's right.
We use that phrase, Jesus wept.
Yeah.
And what Peter crept, all sort of things we talk about back in the day. But Jesus wept. He showed emotion. I thought about it today. He was gentle.
Mhm.
He was reported to be gentle. He was reported also to be stern. He was reported to be caring. These are actual qualities, male qualities, that not being pushed, not being encouraged among men. But here's something that I thought about. Jesus was agonizing when it came for the moment for him to go on the cross. Did he not
Right.
say, it's reported to have said, if it be possible, take this cup from me. He was basically battling with this thing that he had to go do. That is a dilemma, a crisis, that the humanness showed up as him needing to do something for which he was brought on earth for, as Bible is promulgating. Yet these are human emotions that were shown in the form of man. He wept.
Mhm.
He got angry when he said, my house shall not be a house, my house shall be a house of prayer. And he hit over things. He was gentle. The children came to him. He agonized when it was the moment of his death. These are emotions, human emotions. These are cues, it seems to me, that one should be deliberate about in dismantling society's expectation of tough, man up, pray about it. And as I sought to think through where the church has come up short, I have also sought to think through where we can look for cues and clues, because it is there. Vera, give me a second. Vera was saying something, I come to you.
I'm going to say something, 2 words. I believe that pastors need to be more transparent and authentic with their congregation.
Transparent and authentic.
If they're
I'm
going
suffering too.
through a crisis, it's okay to say all is well once in a while, but when you're, when you lose a loved one and your wife is having a psychotic break and the pastor gets up there like nothing is the matter, it turns the congregation off. You want me to bare my soul to you, and you can't be transparent to me. So transparent and authenticity are 2, characteristics from the top down that will drive a church.
All right. Dr. Thomas, go ahead, Maurice, before I go to Dr. Thomas.
All right.
Yeah, I wanted to add to this.
Maurice, quickly.
Just piggybacking on what you said, Ricardo, when you talked about the different emotions of Jesus Christ, right? And one of the things that come to my mind immediately, and we all say this, right, is, men, you need to talk more. You need to talk more. You need to get it out. And there is great truth to that, right? Because we know from the mental health field, right, that you can't heal what you won't talk about and what you won't confront. Right. So it's important that we put that out there. But here's like what I'd like for us to consider. Right. As opposing to us, even as a church, saying you got to talk more, and man, you need to open up more. And there is truth to that. I don't want to deny that. Perhaps the other way we want to look at it is to say, help us to understand how you best communicate. How do you best express yourself, right? Because for some men, expressing themselves might not be in talking. It might be in doing. It might be in fixing. It might be engaging in exercise. It might be when someone is in crisis, they're going to run over immediately, and they're going to bring a bag of groceries, or they're going to come over and they're going to start painting your house. So what I want to encourage us to do is, as we begin to think about men and how men deal with their mental health, I really want to dismantle. I like that word that you use, that notion that, okay, men who are watching, I want you to now go home and I want you to start talking to your wife. I want you to start talking to the church. I want you to start bearing your soul, because here is what could happen. That could be more traumatic for the male than saying to them, find healthy ways to express yourself. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense.
And I'll say this other thing, and it's going to sound strange. Sometimes we want to fix the dysfunction. And we're saying, well, we should fix the dysfunction. But the truth is, for some people, if you were to fix the dysfunction, they would become more dysfunctional. So what we may need to do is to help them to manage and move through the dysfunction. And immediately people are pushing back, and you're saying, wait a minute, this guy's not a Christian. This guy's not a true therapist. But in my work, I have found that I do more harm when I pull the rug from people. And when I tell them, get out of your dysfunction, and we try to fix the dysfunction, perhaps what we need to do is, given the context that they're in, is to help them manage and function through that dysfunction. I hope I'm making sense, because that sound is so strange right now.
You are Dr. Morris. You are definitely with it. And we're taking a lot from it. In fact, Gerard has been nodding. Dr. Thomas, I'm coming to you now on this one, because I am still conscious, concerned about the at-risk teens. RaisingBlackMen.org that we have launched is about empowering our young men so that they become no longer endangered, but they become the best citizens of the society and be all that God wants them to be. But your dissertation, your research, your work has shown that they are at risk to really walking out, getting out, committing suicide. I don't want to tiptoe around this. I want you to tell us what you have found so that the mothers who are watching can know what to look for, because moving to the point of the conversation is how we must help. Doc.
All right. Well, the research coming out of the United States is that there is an increase in suicide among the black men.
Wow.
And so that is concerning on young black men. You see, even the fact that the crisis that the world is going through now, and the United States is going through, we're going through the corona crisis, but we're also going through this black racism stuff.
Yes.
And who are the people most at risk? Are those persons who are in the lower echelon in society, those who struggle with and not being able to feed themselves in a healthy kind of way, those who are more vulnerable. One of the things that came out of the Mental Health Academy with their suicide prevention workshop today is that with the corona crisis, there has been an increase in increase in sales of guns in the United States. 51% of those who die by suicide in the United States die by the gun. And so there is a sense of uneasiness. There's a sense of lack of control. There's a sense in which we need to self-protect, and we need to find the elements to be able to protect ourselves. So those are some warning signs now. Where is this all heading? Now, the other thing I want to point out is that one of the risk factors to suicide is really a history of substance abuse. And we find that at various levels in the society, and we have got to be able to train our men to be able to train our younger men that is not the way to go, because it's really speaks of a sense of denial, a sense of I can't deal with the situation, so I want a way out of it. So there are just many concerns that are being raised right now that we need to deal with. Allow me to make two other points that from what came up earlier. One of them is that we have got to, and I quote from a psychiatrist in Jamaica, Dr. Abel, name the emotion, claim the emotion, and tame the emotion. So we have got to be able to be honest with ourselves, and that has come up already. Be honest with ourselves. Name the emotion.
Claim the emotion.
Claim it. Yeah, that is how I feel. I am sad, I am disappointed, I am angry. And then we have got to tame it by managing it. I want to just quote one thing from my book, Confronting Suicidal Teens at Risk, as it relates to the church.
Yes.
A church must hear the stories of pain, suffering, and failure in the lives of its members, and those who tell the stories must receive from the church both lamentation and the healing balm of Christ. When the church is open and honest about pain and suffering, it can then confront in love even the most difficult of human failures and crises.
Transparency and authenticity.
Transparency and authenticity. So I agree with Dr. Maurice that some work has started, and there can't be segregation but we have to come together to be able to just get the maximum to be able to deal with the healing of our nations and the healing of our young men.
This is our Courageous Conversation. It's what we do a few Sunday nights a month, coming to you with real topics, real conversation, attacking it from different angles, because it's about having the conversation you want to have, and with the most honesty, truth, and authenticity. May I take this moment right now to let you know the reason we're doing all of this is for young black men like your sons, your brother, your father, your husband, your nephew. We believe that we're stepping into this to be the change that you want to see. We have come together as with men like Dr. Maurice Cassell, and we've said we want to be there for them. We want to be that brother that you can pick up the phone and call or send an email and said, I don't like how my son is behaving. Do you have anybody who can just talk to him? Is resources like what we have on this panel that we may say, yes, reach out to us. When we ask you to be a part of the change we want to see, it's because we believe that we can be of, Pastor Sambas uses the term, salvific value in this society. So feel free, please go over to raisingblackmen.org. That's raisingblackmen.org. It's scrolling on your screen. Help us be the change you want to see, because we want to be the change for your sons, your brother, your nephew, the men in your life. This is the moment when we want to hear from our panelists as we move the conversation forward in terms of how do we help to stem this tide that is rising for suicide among men. Your Dr. Thomas said, black men. That's what's growing up. But suicide is the ultimate. Listen, you know about the prisons. They end up in prisons. We end up in prisons, end up on the streets, end up going to gangs because they're seeking for something to numb, deal with this, what they're dealing with. And that's why we're part of raisingblackmen.org. Panelists, I want us to use the next few moments as we come up on our 1.5 hour mark to talk about the solution. Not solution, but talk about what can we do? Because the Courageous Conversation never presume that we have the solution. What we're committed to is to sharing what we believe can be done, that can be done. Gerard, I want to come to you now. You shared the struggles. You shared the attempt to take your life and get out. What stopped you? How have you come to this moment? And what are your coping mechanisms? What are you doing to say, Ricardo, the man that I see that has engaged me online, talk to us about that man today.
You know, I'm grateful. She's resting and stuff now. I'm grateful to my mother. They say that I am the darker version to her. My mother played an integral, role in the latter part of my life.
Yes.
Especially when I came up here and we reconnected. She wasn't aware of what I was really dealing with. But the day some years ago when my mom found out that that I was about to say, Ma, I love you, I'm going to take my life, my mother wept. My mother wept on the other line. And she begged me, and she reminded me of purpose.
Purpose, okay?
Yes. She reminded me of the purpose. She also shared with me that he who began a good work is faithful to complete.
Yes.
Now, she wasn't preaching at me.
Yes.
At at that point in time, she wasn't pulling scripture or anything like that. She was dealing with her son who was bleeding. And for a moment there, I listened. My mother turned down jobs to stay with me, to get me back on track.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was married again, God granted me one of the greatest gifts, a son. A son.
Yes.
And not only did he grant me a son, they say that that's my twin.
You mean you?
Yes, you saw him and stuff. He's the lighter version.
Yes.
But not only that, he carries the name Gerard Anderson Placid Jr.
Yeah.
But it gets better. We were both born on a Wednesday,
Yes.
and we were both born on May 2nd,
Yes.
2018, 1973.
Yeah.
And he has brought me
Joy.
so much joy and a new lease in life.
Yeah.
That not only am I singing again, I do my little services online, but I live. And again,
Tell us about fitness. Tell us about fitness in your life. How does fitness help you?
For me, the more I exercise, the more the endorphins are released up here. In the military, they tell you that the majority of it starts here. So when you think that you can't, this is saying one thing, there is something that they encourage to tap into, because I am bench pressing comfortably, 220 pounds.
Yes.
Easily. I'm 47.
Yeah. Dr. Murray is almost at your level now.
6 days a week. I get up. I get up. I get up early. I head out. I exercise, and I go, 2.5 hours, and then head to work. I've been doing well, as a matter of fact, for the last year and a half, because I'm doing my degree. And when I did counseling as one of my, I'm doing a criminal justice, a lot of things opened up to me, especially when I was doing counseling.
Yes.
But in it, the exercise, and I encourage people and stuff. Get out there. There are people on my block who go run with me, and
nice.
Now the pull-up bars.
Nice,
I'm so happy.
yes.
I put it on stuff on Facebook, so everybody and stuff is doing it. I feel real good. I live for him.
Yes.
My God.
Yeah.
I live for my son.
Yes.
I live for my family.
Yes.
I live to fulfill my purpose. And I'm so grateful and stuff that he's given me a new lease and stuff in life. But
Let me ask you
this is
Let
awesome.
me ask Gerard, did you find it important to apply medication?
I was on, and I'm being honest with you.
That's fine.
They had me some years ago. They had me like about 13 different.
Okay.
And I found it. I was more spaced up. My mom said that she didn't recognize me. I think things started to once they cut back, because it's always trial.
Yes.
Trial
and error.
Exactly. Medication. It's as you so rightfully put it. It's trial and error.
Yeah. It's a practice. That's all Vera does. Is to practice on people.
And it worked. Today I'm not on anything.
Yes.
I'm on steroids. And when I say steroids, I see Vera open her eyes.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the steroids in the gym, the push-ups.
Gerard, I'm going to go to one of the things I love about your story now is I can see the joy. I can see who you are coming through. And I ask all of that to everybody because I want to use Gerard. You can see how his emotions even went through the beginning. A couple of times he wanted to cry, and we're fine with this on the Courageous Conversation. We believe in crying. And now we can see the joy, his son. He spoke of medication, experimenting with things, like what Vera does, give people all these things until they figure out things. And Dr. Morris did tell us that they interrogate it. And we see the joy he spoke of fitness. Now let me go to the doctors on this. Gentlemen and lady, this is a part of the conversation that I want to press in to say the mother who's watching, the big sister, the wife, the daughter, the mommy, like Gerard's mommy who had to say, no, I ain't giving up on my son. This is a moment for me that I want you to be very careful in how we're going to address it. Because every man, they say 1 in 4 deal with mental health issues. There are 4 of us on this panel. And it doesn't have to be Gerard, it could be me. In fact, there are moments in my own life when I thought I was battling with things like this. A guy who is, they say, accomplished, whatever. Because there are moments when I wondered, why does nothing feel great to me? There are moments when I'm saying, I've not achieved anything. I found myself asking this question of, I just wanted to find my father who passed away when I was 7 or 8, to say, I wanted to find a father figure, to ask him, how am I doing? Am I doing okay? At my age, am I where I should be? Dad? Big brother? Yeah, this man looking at you. I found that there was an emptiness that I couldn't pinpoint. And it had nothing to do with religiosity, nothing to do with God. And everybody knows you better stay away from me with that. Because I believe that our mind and our cognitive skills must be put at work, not be pushed aside for faith. I do not believe in that.
Amen.
I believe the Holy Spirit must be engaged.
Mm-hmm.
And as I prepared for this tonight, I wondered how many other men accomplished, at the top of their game, being the man that you think they are, but struggling with a sense of, am I providing enough? Am I doing enough? Am I where I needed to have been? Am I in the right career path? It's our time to talk to them, Dr. Thomas. It's our time to talk to them, Dr. Maurice. It's our time to talk to them, Dr. Vera. Maurice, I'm going to hold you for last on this one. Dr. T, talk to me. No, I go to Vera. Vera, you have a husband. You have grandkids and kids. Talk to me about that. What do you say to that brother watching now? To that mother who has sons and going on? Let's talk to them.
The first thing I want to say is sometimes we have to be rather than do. Be in God's presence. And this society is, we got to go more, we have to get more degrees, we have to push harder, do more sit-ups and push-ups. And we don't spend time just living in the moment and appreciating now. That's all we have is this moment right now in time. We don't have tomorrow. We worry about things we shouldn't worry about.
Yes.
We deal with our own problems. So just centering yourself and being in the moment and appreciating is the first thing. Second of all, to know that we're all imperfect. We're never going to get it right. And being able to deal with your imperfections is very important. And number 3, finding trust in someone. Unfortunately, we need more Black professionals in mental health. Thank God some people come to me and they say, well, you're a white woman, you're a Black woman in a white body because they know my background. I don't talk like a white woman, I don't act like a white woman, Puerto Rican, Hispanic, Jamaican, and Nigerian are my family.
Close enough.
I'm a minority. So I can get to them. And the second thing is that vulnerability and honesty. You need to share your stories. Gerard, my heart was breaking. But what I heard from your story is that from a very young age, you believed the lies that people told you. That became your cognitive distortion. And it fed your soul and it made your soul die. And then you went to the military thinking it was going to be better. And they gave you more jobs. So we need to really bear our souls to each other and be honest. And then as a provider, I can't just give them medicine. No, you need me, call me. Give me a cell phone. I give my patients my cell phone. I have over 3,000 patients. They don't abuse it. But when they're in a crisis, I'd rather them call me than go to the ER. I sit there for 24 hours. So I really believe that we have to be in this together. If we're not in, give them hope. Hope to me means having only positive expectations. Give me 3 to 4 weeks and you're going to be 60 to 70% better. I assure you of that. I can't send them to Maurice, now I can over video. But, tune them up and let them do the hard work later. But be their coach during that time and check on them. That phone call every 2 or 3 days, hey, how are you doing? Goes a far way. And for anyone who's watching right now, look for someone that you can trust. And just because one provider messed you up, don't mean they're all going to be like that. You can Google anybody and get the rating.
Yes. That's
what I would say. Encourage them. Treat it just like you're having a heart attack or a stroke. You want instant cure now. There's no time to delay. And if anyone is acting weird or isolating or distracting or cutting out their friends, that's the time. Be aware of those subtle symptoms that are going on before it becomes a crisis.
The voice of the lone woman on the panel, Dr. Vera Imperiali. We had to have you on board because we know she's so proud of you being from Brooklyn. But we know the value that you bring to this conversation. Dr. Donovan Thomas, the man.
Well, there are just several things that I'd like to be able to say, and I'd like to just speak to parents and caregivers first of all. And I'd like to say, use your ears. What are you hearing from them? Are there expressions are they talking about not being valued, not wanting to live? What are you hearing from them? So take it seriously. Don't just say, don't say that, but get to the root of it. It may be that there are some self-concept issues. It may be that there are some rejection issues. It may be that there are some hurts and pain that singing not going to help them to be healed of. So use your ears. Take what they're saying seriously. So listen. The second thing I'd like to say is use your eyes. What do you see? Is there deterioration of themselves? Is there lack of energy? Is there lack of interest in self-care and those kinds of stuff? And then sometimes that self-care leads to where they're not taking care of themselves, to the fact that they have to use our nose. What are we smelling? What's going on with them? So spend time with our children. Sometimes we are so bombarded with so many things in our lives that we are so distracted because of the cares and the pressures. And right now, during this corona time, many of us are dealing with all kinds of issues. Yes. I want to ask you to take time out to be able to look out for those children under your care. I want to say to us, that we need to know how to do our assessment of those at risk of suicide. And I want to give a simple little scale called the PIN scale, developed by a man called Stephen Lansing. Is there a plan? The more detailed the plan, the closer the person is to the suicide act. The I is the intensity of the method. More men complete suicide. Many more women attempt.
I heard that, yes.
Because men use more drastic means. And the N is the nearness of the method. Does the person already have the means of death? So the challenge is to be able to separate our hurting men and women, those who are going through issues, separate them from the means of death. We talk about increase in sales of guns. It may be that we need to have closer supervision. And the S is support. Step into somebody's world and make a difference. You need to empower yourself so that you can help others. You need to deal with your own issues, that you have greater capacity to be able to help others. Ricardo, I want to ask you permission to just mention the offering in the seminar that we're going to be hosting this year. And we have an opportunity to get people from different parts of the world. September 10th is World Suicide Prevention Day.
Yes.
And the theme is working together to prevent suicide. And we have some important topics that will be dealt with. We're talking about self-care for caregivers. We're talking about recognition and intervention of pre-suicide risk. Then isolation and suicidality. It's lockdown time still in many places.
Yeah.
How is that impacting? We're talking about COVID-19, understanding its impact on mental health and well-being. We're talking about spirituality and suicidality. How does spirituality impact suicide? Is it a protective factor? Or what? Then managing suicide risk in children and teenagers post-COVID-19. And there is a registration site. Go to chooselifeintel.org. You can register on site. Doctors, nurses get credit for continuing education. Whether you're in Jamaica or you're in US or in Europe, we encourage you. It's September 10th. There's a WhatsApp number. I think you're going to post we're going to
put up the flyer now. We're going to put up the flyer.
Yeah. And just get involved. Just empower yourself to be better able to provide help and support. We are in this to make a difference. We come to this as an NGO, a charity organization. We come to this with religious base, but we want to be practical and relevant. We shouldn't be so church leaders. We shouldn't be so heavenly minded that we are
earthly good.
Let's be relevant. Let's touch lives where people are hurting. Amen. Do not get trapped into secrecy.
Amen.
Do not say go ahead and try.
Yes.
Do not ignore a threat. Do not leave the person alone. These are some of the don'ts. And I'd love to get an opportunity before we wrap up to say what to do if you are suicidal.
Sure, we will do, Doc. Dr. Moraes, I come to you next. You know the audience. You know what you're talking about.
Wow. Such a relevant topic, and I know so many people. One of the things, when I talk about mental illness or mental health is I say it this way. We need to treat mental health and mental illness like the way we treat roaches. And I want you to pause for a moment, and I want you to think on that, lean into that, smile about it, rationalize it. But here's what I mean by that. And I say this all the time when I train police officers, doctors, clinicians, and immediately their eyes will pop open. And I know you're saying, what do you mean by that, Dr. Moraes? Well, the way that we deal with roaches, not step on them, not spray them, but the way that we deal roaches is we turn on the lights, right? And that's what happens. When you turn on the lights, what begins to happen? The roaches begin to scatter. And that's what we're doing tonight. We are turning on the lights on mental health, mental illness, and suicidal issues, right? We are turning on the lights, and we're saying we don't want people functioning in darkness, right? We want you to know that there's hope, there's light in Jesus Christ, and there's also the professional aspect of things. 3 things I want to encourage us as we think through this, and some things that we could possibly do. The first thing is be aware of your triggers. What triggers you? What will push you into into a crisis mode, whether you feel disrespected, you're hurt, or trauma, whatever the case might be. So be aware. And when you're talking to your children, right, and when you're talking to adults, what are your triggers? What is it that triggers you? The second thing that I want you to be aware of is to say to people is listen as your body speaks. Listen when your body is speaking and your body is saying, I feel overwhelmed. I'm getting anxious. I have sweaty palms. I'm having trouble breathing. I'm having trouble eating. So very important that we are aware of our triggers. And I want to specifically talk about our young Black men who are under so much stress as it relates to what's happening with the racial tensions, right? We really want to make them aware.
Yes.
What are your triggers? What will get you upset? Walk them through what they're feeling when a police officer pulls them over. Is it flight, fight, or freeze mode, right? So really, really important. I can't highlight that enough. Talk with our men about what gets you upset. Walk them through. What are you feeling? What's happening in your body when the police officer pulls you over to the side? When the police officer racial profiles you? When people, deal with you with microaggression and racism, right? So really important. And listen as your body speaks, right? We want our young men especially to be aware of when their bodies are getting upset and when they want to run or when they want to fight or when they want to talk back. So that's the other thing. The third thing is, and I have a cup with me that I was drinking earlier, and I want people to be aware, and this is how I think of suicide and mental health conditions. Again, someone will say, what caused a person to think about taking their life by suicide or even taking their life by suicide? Please know it's not just one thing, right? It's a combination of several things. And the way I like to explain it is this. It's the last drop in a cup that was already overflowing. And can I say it again? It's the last drop in a cup that was already overflowing. So our role and our goal is to help people to empty their cups, right? So that when the last thing comes, if it's the breakup, if it's the divorce, if it's the medical condition, if it's racial profiling, right? We want to help them to begin to empty their cup through various means. We talked about prayer. We talked about meditation. But I want to highlight really quickly some things. Laughter is key. Yeah. Right? Laughter. Get people, especially our young people, get them laughing, right? Laughter has been shown to reduce pain, right? To relieve anxiety and depression. It releases endorphins, which is the body's natural feel-good cell, right? The other thing is breathing, right? Some simple breathing techniques, inhaling and exhaling, right? It helps to rewire the brain. Another thing that we don't promote enough among children and adults is play. What did you just say? We're talking about mental illness and we're talking about suicide and you're talking about play. Absolutely. Our adults and our children, we need to be people who play. When you play, it actually rewires your brain. The prefrontal cortex of the brain, which is the frontal lobe portion of your brain, right? It gets bigger and it works faster and empathy is released. Things like exercise, we talked about that, right? Being thankful is another thing, right?
Still owe 25 push-ups, so remember.
There you go. I will, right? Thankfulness. We are seeing, the research is showing that the more thankful, which aligns with the Bible, the more thankful that you are, is the more that you are rewired internally. And the last one that I will say, well, last two things I will say is this idea of gratitude, right? We talk about gratitude and generosity. That's the word. Research is showing that people who are generous and giving, right, when they give of their time and give of themselves and they mentor others, Ricardo, that something begins to be rewired on the inside. And the last thing is, and I always show this, I don't know if you could see this. I'm going to pull it in close. I don't know if you can see that there. It says, there it is. It says hope. And this is something that I have in my office, and it's a hope pill, right? And what I say to people, and Dr. Vera, you love this, I'll say to people, medication is good, but medication takes 4 to 6 weeks to work in your system. but hope works immediately. So if we could get people to be a hopeful people that listen, we're going to bounce back. We're going to come back. There is hope and things are going to change. So I just gave you a whole bunch right there. Thanksgiving, gratitude, generosity, laughter, play, hope. Get people and our young people and our adults to be engaged with that. And those are factors that will help us to deal with things like mental health condition. Can I say one last thing? And I can't forget this, Dr. Thomas, you're going to love this. As I train first responders in suicide awareness, one of the things that I always open with and I say to them is we don't want to take a sad shock, traumatic approach to suicide. Because when we take that approach, it becomes a fulfilling prophecy. And we've seen this happen so often. Someone will come in and they'll share about suicide and they're so depressed, which is why I love having Gerard with us. They're so depressed, they're so down that when you leave, you now begin to take on that negative energy, right? So when we're talking about suicide, we want to take a strength-based approach. And what that means is we want people to tap into what are your strengths? What's working in your life? Who are the people that give you strength? What are the things that give you strength? We want them to begin to laugh in the midst of suicide. And that sounds so strange, but I'm telling you, this is what we're seeing in the field, right? We don't want to take this sad shock, and we should give statistics. I give statistics almost every day of my life. But please, we want people not to take this sad, shock, traumatic approach where our heads are down and it's doom and it's gloom. No. What are your strengths? What's working in your life now? I mean, a simple question like that will help people to begin to open up. I've said a whole lot.
Sure, thanks, Doc. I mean, we expect a whole lot from all of you. In fact, Denise Hill, as she shared about depression, remember she said, when you find out things that are not going well for you, think of all the things that are going well for you. Think of all the people who love you. Gerard spoke earlier, when everybody was against me, my mom was there for me. I remember when she candidly, maybe she's watching, she candidly spoke about depression, and then she said, you think about that. Dr. Vera, Dr. Donovan, Dr. Moraes, Gerard, thank you so much for your participation tonight. Let me go to you, the viewers, and just tell you this. This is the reason why we had to do this tonight. Of all the topics I prepared for, this one did something to me on a deeper level. Usually I'm prepping. I literally did 5 miles run this morning and another 3 later in the afternoon, because it was so heavy on my head, not as a burden, but as a purpose to carry. I'm more committed to RaisingBlackMen.org because Dr. Thomas has elucidated for me. He has enlightened it. He has shed light on the fact that, Ricardo, black men, the suicide rate among black men, the rate is climbing when all others are declining. Racial injustice for many, they can't take it. I'll be honest with you. For me, I cannot watch anything online that has to do with a police officer brutalizing a black man. It tears me apart mentally that I have to stay away from it. It started with the Trayvon Martin case. Every time something came on, I had to turn it off because immediately I saw my son. George Floyd, I could not watch the knee in his neck. It did something to me on a level that I couldn't understand what's going on. Jacob Blake, I saw something online that he was shackled to his bed, 7 bullets in the back. Yet the 17-year-old walked past police with a gun. These are things that create mental trauma among our black men, that we have to find our ways of coping. For me, part of the way of coping is to clarify what I allow to filter in my headspace, what I consume via television, via social media. Protect your space. But because of that, mothers watching, this man is committed even more so to RaisingBlackMen.org to help mentor your sons, your nephews, your brothers, even your husbands. Feel free to go over to RaisingBlackMen.org, sign up, help us be the change you want to be. But I'm going to read a poem for you right now. I've read this before, but I'll tell you the reason I wrote this poem. I wrote it because I was feeling overwhelmed. 2014, a fancy apartment in Toronto, Canada. Taking up a huge plum position, vice president of our business over there. But was feeling so overwhelmed by my responsibility, being away from my family who was alone in New Jersey, away from me, having to deal with needing to provide, so I must still accept the job, and I couldn't stay with my family while I did that. All the anxiety and all the issues it created. I woke up one morning about 4 o'clock and I wrote this poem. And as we're dealing with mental health, it becomes more poignant tonight to share with you. So as you listen, as I read it, I want you to have every man in your life in your mind. Every brother, every father, every son, your husband, partner, nephew, uncle, because this is for him. To my brother who suffers silently without the words to express the pain you feel, I hear you. To my brother who is treated like a boy at work, but must be a man at home, I affirm you. To my brother who labors valiantly to provide for your family who depends on you, while feeling underappreciated and even taken for granted, I salute you. To my brother who feels overwhelmed and undervalued, yet has no one with whom to share your deepest anxieties, hurt, frustrations, and disappointments, I empathize with you. To my brother who continues working even though you find no purpose nor passion in the work you do, I encourage you. To my brother who keeps on loving while feeling disrespected, even ridiculed, I love you. To my brother who feels caged in the prison of your own emotions without the words to express your desires, ambitions, and aspirations, I speak for you. To my brother who struggles silently with an addiction, secretly, while pretending to have it all publicly, I pray for you. To my brother who must be brave and strong as a warrior outwardly, while feeling scared, lonely, intimidated internally, I honor you. Yes, to my brother, I hear you. I affirm you. I salute you. I empathize with you. I encourage you. I love you. I speak for you. I pray for you. And I honor you. And for you, take time to affirm that brother, that man in your life today, tonight. He may just need to hear it right now. And this leads me to just thank my panelists, my guests, who joined me to share with you in this moment, in this time, as we've attempted to unpack the issue of mental health and our men. It is our sincere hope that something you've heard today, something you've heard tonight, would have equipped you to be better at hearing, listening, smelling, as Dr. Donovan said, for those young men around you. You have place, you have resources. Choose Life International is one that has been doing the work for a long time. I highly recommend chooselifeinternational.com.org. Go online and check them out. I highly recommend for you to be a part of the event on September 10. And I will have it on our website. I will have it on my Facebook page. I'll have it where you can see it, because I believe in the work that Dr. Donovan Thomas is doing. So on September 10, Suicide Prevention Day, right, Doc, is what it is. And we are supporting of it. Again, Choose Life International. They have the resources, and Doc has done a book, Confronting Suicide in Our Teens at Risk. Bring up the book, Doc. You have it right there. Yes, suicide, helping teens at risk.
Confronting suicide, helping teens at risk.
Confronting suicide, helping teens at risk. Dr. Donovan Thomas, Google him. He's all over the place. And of course, highly recommended. He is somebody that the Raising Black Men will be working closely with going forward. And lastly, to ask you, please, we appreciate your generosity as you go over to raisingblackmen.org. Help us, help me, help Dr. Maurice, help Gerard, help Dr. Thomas, help Dr. Vera. Help us be the change that you want to see. We want to be here for your young men. September 19th, we're going to be having a back to school empowerment hour right here. We'll give you all the information, but that's what raisingblackmen.org is trying to do. Empower our young black men. Again, raisingblackmen.org. Please go over, help us be the change. Cash App, $ RBM 2022. Thanks for your generosity. And again, thanks to my technical director behind the scene, the lovely, the wonderful Mrs. Sasha Bryan, for keeping us on the air. Until next time, the courageous conversation continues. Hold that brother next to you. Hold him tight. Let him know you hear him. Let him know you're listening. Let him know he has somebody by his side. He's not in this alone. Thank you. Have a good night. God bless.
All the best. Thank you for having us.